Hello, welcome to the 20th day of January 2022. My name is Kurt, and this is my Good Life Meditation, something that I do every day to remind myself of how I did yesterday and last night, sleeping-wise, relative to my objectives and principles, and to plan for the coming day. And smack in the middle there, I recite my objectives and principles to remember them, to maintain them, and to put them foremost in my mind. First, yesterday and last night. Yesterday was a good day of work, solid day of work. Completed the recording of the first lesson for the training that I'm developing, which is the key centerpiece element of one of the projects that I'm working on. Was able to wrap up the training plan and the training manual as well. That completes the review period for those documents. I give the team another half day to think about it before I put those into final draft form and send those documents to the sponsor to review. The other projects are moving smoothly as well, and I'll get to today later. Other than that, nothing, no real big challenges. No, I wasn't really ambushed by anything. It was a good day. Sleep really well. My usual, fall asleep at about 8:15 p.m. I'm finished and I'm off to bed. I think I was lights out before 9 last night. Good solid night of sleep. Okay, so let's do my objectives and principles. The 7 objectives of the good life, which is related in my book, Going Alone. This book describes the adventure of going alone into the deep wilderness, and then coming back and doing something with that experience insofar as trying to build a better life from the apprehension of a universe devoid of any caring other than what we get from one another. That's these objectives and principles. There we go. 7 objectives are to be always ready to die. The next is to make good and effective use of time. The third objective is to develop and maintain good and sound life principles, the ones that I'm relating right now. After that comes the objective of cultivating good emotional reactions. Then the objective to perform good actions. The next objective is to recognize my true limits and my true opportunities, so that I'm working on things that have a fruitful gain, or the potential of fruitful gain, and it's not so much staying away from, but recognizing where my efforts are not likely to have much improvement or impact. And then finally, the last objective is to just do one thing at a time, and to do that thing slowly. When I put all those objectives together, that yields what I call a good life. The term the good life, of course, is not my own. I borrowed that from the skeptics, and from even earlier than that, from all the way back to Aristotle himself. The good life, reflecting a life lived well, structured by sound and reasonable ambition and principles. Now, my 30 principles. The first of these is the principle of war, to always be at war with everything that I hold true, and all propositions that others claim are true that they wish that I would adapt or adopt. The next principle is the principle of reason, which has 3 sub-principles. These are honesty, objectivity, and doubt. Reason is the tool that I use in the pursuit of that aforementioned war. If I am reasonable with my treatment of what I discover in the world, then I should be able to discern what is true and what is fancy. The third principle is the homunculus, the idea of a little man living inside my head who is my consciousness. This is my substitute for a soul, which I do not believe exists. The homunculus will die with me. I think there's no escape after death and no living after after our consciousness winks out. The next principle is called the Anchorhold, an idea that I borrowed from medieval religious people who, particularly in Europe, would hold themselves up in a wall, in a little enclosure, or be held up by in a wall at the edge of a church, and be captives where they could pray and eat and live a devout life in solitude. I borrowed that idea because the Anchorhold for me is a picture of us, human beings, standing on a little rock in a sea where the waters rise and fall with the tide and the waves churn, the weather comes, etc. And we are vulnerable. It's a scary place to be. And we're ultimately all alone, each of us on our own rock in that same vast sea where I can wave at you. You can wave at me, maybe shout across the waters, but we can never be together. Even if we're in a deep embrace, we can't be together. We all ultimately have to die alone. So too will the sea one day consume each of us upon our Anchorhold. It's a sober idea, but in reality is a sober thing, it appears. Although we can mask it with, again, with fancy if we like. The next principle is the home of good and evil. The idea that values, ethics, morals are conceptions that we hold in our head. There is no concept of evil swirling in the sea, or blowing in the wind, or shining from the stars. These are ideas that we human beings have, and maybe some of the other sentient animals also have, as a result of the consequence of our brain matter and our brain activity, and the supporting infrastructure of biology and society and ecology. Good and evil are opinions, subjective, in fact, that we do not abide universal truths, though they may appear universal by the very weight of their application and their importance. They are nothing without us. The next principle is called the principle of purpose. In my worldview, there are 3 purpose that I have, that I hold and maintain. These are the purpose of biology, to be a parent and to raise my child successfully into adulthood, to help her to become a viable adult on her own, and so that I can hang around for a while to watch, enjoy the results, and then die and get the hell out of the way. That's probably my most important principle. It certainly is my most important principle. It's certainly the only principle which my biology, this infrastructure that I am, rewards me with seemingly an attaboy. It's a strange thing how our very bodies, and our minds and our genetics, something about the way that we think and the way that we behave, corrals us into particular behaviors. And this is one of them. And all the things that lead up to it, including, settling down, finding a spouse, making love, etc. All this stuff leads to this. The second principle in my worldview, which is simply one that I've adopted, is to live a virtuous life, where virtue is defined as the pursuit of the well-being of thinking creatures. And this is what I try to do through my daily activities of working hard and working sound and working good and being a good citizen and a good father and husband and brother and member of society. Or good, again, is well defined. And the last purpose is some mission. And my mission is, my personal mission was to have the experiences, the adventures that I had, to write my book and books, but mainly going alone, and now to share the good life through this daily activity. This video amounts to currently my purpose in life, beyond being a father and a good member of society. The next purpose, the next principle, is the atomic principle. Everything is made of little bits and pieces, atoms and molecules, and just like our consciousness is not forever, nor too is our supporting infrastructure of the body, which will quickly dissolve, decompose, or burn away, depending on how I die. I told my wife last night that I wanted to have my body, and I got this idea, I think I got it from Egon, my Estonian friend. I think he was talking about, was it him? Who was talking about having the body donated to medical science. We were watching a movie last night, Yumiko and I. It's a TV series called After Death with Ricky Gervais. And it deals with death and life after death. Not life after death, but the living of those who are around after someone they love dies. And I told Yumiko, I said, when I die, I want you to give my body to science. And and she said, put that in writing. So I will. The next next principle is the principle of nature. Everything has some particular nature, and it's good to recognize what that is. It's the nature of January to be cold. Yet the sun is increasing every day. The next principle is maturity. No, sorry, the pirate ride. The pirate ride is simply my assertion that free will is an illusion. That though we appear to be making decisions on our own, really we would never make any decision other than the ones that we do. That we are jostled and pushed and prodded by the universe in the directions that we go. And we can fret about making the right or wrong choice when I don't think there's any choice involved. Or there is choice involved, but it is it is the same choice that a domino has in falling over in a particular direction. It would never have gone any other way, given the way that the universe is set up, the way the dominoes are set up that precede it. I can't prove this. This is a tentatively held position, yet it resonates with my experience and my understanding to date. So I hold it tentatively. It's not it's something that's a reserved position, but I operate with it. The next principle is the principle of maturity, which has two sub-principles. These are wisdom and fortitude. This is nothing more than the suggestion that we are mature when we remember our experiences. We're wise in that capacity, and then we have the strength to live better, so informed by past experience. Excuse me. The next principle is the social principle. We are creatures of one another. We are creatures of family, of our dogs. Hi, Rudy. Of society. And it's good to remember that and to behave in such a way. The next principle is public speaking. Simply a reminder to use our words carefully with very select vocabulary. Vocabulary and grammar that others can readily understand, not being fancy with our words, even if we have a large vocabulary, to not show off with it. And it's not just vocabulary, it's also the way we speak and how we speak and how many words we use, using an economy of words to convey our meaning clearly and crisply, with good nature and humor. Good-natured humor, no less. Humor that isn't at the expense of anyone, but maybe a little self-deprecating at times. That's tasteful. And then, of course, to never use our words to talk about others who are not around, or to say mean things. And neither gossip nor be mean. Next is the principle of temperance. Why do I feel like I'm messing things up again? Temperance. And the sub-principles of suffering, simplicity, and apathy, where temperance is the ability to control our consumption of anything at all. Work and play and food and drink, sex, everything. And we suffer when we deny ourselves what we want. And we live a simple life when we live a tempered life. And we apply apathy to the parts of life where we are not in control. Again, like I said yesterday, I think I'm going to move apathy to as a sub-principle of the true limits and true opportunity. I'll think about that. Might be better there. The next principle is called the horror show. Life is a horror show. There's lots of different examples of that. I don't need to enumerate them or discuss them here. I encountered one last night, and I'm not going to go into it, but I encountered a thought last night that about the horror of the world. And it settled roughly on me. I dwelled on it for a while. Still am. Reminded of it just now. So much horror. It's good to remember that, so that I can keep sober in my thinking and keep my fortitude up in terms of working to make the world better, despite the horror, in spite of the horror, in opposition to it, perhaps. Okay, so the next principle is called that which must be borne, carried, and what we have to carry is, for example, our what we know about the horror show, and also we have to carry the things that are our responsibilities, the work that we must do, and the challenges we have to hold and carry and bear. Sub-principle there is the hand on the tiller, keeping our hand on the tiller of the sailing ship, keeping our course away from the storm, through the storm mostly. Next is two principles. Distraction is the first principle, followed by agency and the great indifference. Distraction is what we do so we don't have to see that the universe is a howling waste full of horror that doesn't really give a damn about us. And we do that by focusing on our work and our families and our our religion, our hobbies, whatever. It's all just a big distraction. I'm not saying it's bad necessarily, unless we're distracting ourselves with something that isn't true, which is often the case with so many religions, or in excess, or to the point that we don't make good use of our lives, maybe neglecting the opportunity to improve things, especially when we choose to become a parent and our responsibility demands a particular way of living. Next is, I knew I forgot something. It's in there. I always forget this one. The Feast of Offal, which I think belongs just past, I should have put that in just past that which must be borne. The Feast of Offal is what happens when we have had enough and we get upset and we let the whole world know about it. And we make them upset. And then they do the same to others. So I try to just not do that, to bottle it in. and to find other ways to express my upset and anger. Well, mostly I do this by no longer being that type of person, by living a life where that doesn't really happen so much anymore. For the most part, that's the case. There was a time in my life when I was never violent, but I would have blown up in anger and upset, and my loved ones would have known that I was not pleased, and it was not a pretty sight. Not violent, but not pretty and not very mature. I don't do that anymore, but I still have really bad days. But for the most part, I keep it to myself. It takes a little practice and effort to learn to do that. But mostly, the best part is when I can live a life that avoids that for the most part. And I think I'm approaching that point, if not already there. That's the Feast of Offal. Okay, then becomes distraction and the agency and the great indifference. Next comes the best seat in the house, to be all right with where I am, who I am, and what I am right now, and not try to be anything different. The next principle after that is the path of wildness, which is the way forward and upward into and through new life, as I like to say. When we were ready to give up the status quo for something new and better and different, at least. There's a way to do that. To collect facts, prepare to make a decision, and be prepared to push on with our gut instinct when we really don't have enough facts to make up our mind and are in danger of just vacillating and not doing anything. Time is short. Next comes a principle called the risk of avoiding risk, which is a recognition that there are deep level risks and surface level risks in life, where the surface level stuff is things like education, marriage, family, a house, good job, saving for retirement, etc. We are all, for the most part, encouraged to do those things, and our societies are set up to foster that. What we're less encouraged to do is to, as the hippies would have said, find ourselves, and to live a self-actualized life, to pursue some personal mission that may be different from the home, family, and hearth. My point is that not all of us, but some of us feel a longing towards that deeper ambition, and if we go after it, we can yield some good results, especially if we do it in a timely manner in our lives. But if we wait, we may end up in our old age, safe and sound and secure, yet feeling like we missed something significant. So watch out, because you can't get that back. Especially after about the early mid 50s, the window really starts to close. Doesn't mean you can't live a fulfilled life, but the opportunities of youth truly do pass. The next principle is sin and damnation. There are 7 sins in my worldview. These are falsity, being untrue, credulity, believing things too quickly, hope, which is a wanting desire divorced from action. It's if you add some action to it, some motive force to hope, then it's better. It's no longer hope. That's ambition. That's a project of some sort. Faith, the dearest of sins, where we justify what we believe on the grounds that we believe. What an absolute it's almost a horror to realize, to recognize that we can set up entire projects and apparatus of our lives founded on faith, which is the biggest nothing burger of all time. There really is nothing to it. It's just, I'm going to believe, I want to believe, and that is good enough reason in itself to believe. Well, talk about not being willing to do the hard work of identifying what is true, and just wanting to dig in wherever you find yourself. The other sins are authority, believing things because someone has convinced us that it's the case by virtue of their seeming background, knowledge, position, the type of respect that they are given, etc. The strange costume that they wear, a funny hat that they don't. And then another sin is a dogma, believing something because the great book is written in the great book, a great book, the blessed tradition. And then superstition, believing things which are practically identified as nonsense by virtue of their categorization. And then finally, gossip, which is a deadly sin, a social sin. And we live the damnation part comes in because we live a damned life when we choose to live engaged in any of these sins. The next principle is complete oblivion. The idea that when we're dead, there'll be absolutely nothing left of us. There'll be no reunion with the ones we left behind, no reconciliation if we left on bad terms, and no justice because there will be no one to apply the justice, and no one around to receive the justice because death is absolute and eternal, so it seems. Next is, after complete oblivion, is the great life adventure. One or more experiences in life that become the centerpiece of our experience, of our existence, of our lives. You know, something that happened that helps to create our identity. I recommend giving yourself that opportunity early in life, in the 20s, to form that nucleus of your identity, whatever it might be. Of course, go to school, get your bachelor's degree at least, and then from that's usually takes you to your mid-20s. From that point all the way to the 30s is your time for your adventure. Go off and do it, and come back to us in your 30s, bloodied, bruised, broke, humbled by life, and with a mind full of experiences and stories that can inform and help you with the rest of your life. You'll probably be behind from those who didn't do that, those who went straight from college to a sound job, bought a house, etc. You'll be 5 years behind in all that. But I think it's a worthwhile trade-off. Especially when you come to the cocktail party and you've got all the interesting stories to tell. Okay, after that comes the season of philosophy, which is a time of life to record whatever the muse is whispering in our ear. Now, of course, I don't believe that there is any such thing as a muse, but I do believe that our minds can begin to conspire within our brains to tell us about what we've learned in ways that we didn't necessarily expect. That's the muse. When the muse speaks, write down, record whatever it's saying, whether it be through written form, books, videos, art, whatever you want to use. But do it while the muse is speaking, because the music has a way of quieting down and going away and never coming back with the exact same thing again, the same way, twice. Next is the bullseye aim. We strive for the mark in life and we usually miss. And that's all right. The uphill climb. Life is like a climbing Mount Fuji, one foot after another. It's trudge, trudge, trudge. The summit always seems to be receding, or so my wife tells me. That's what it's like to climb Fuji. I wouldn't know myself. And then when we turn around at each level, we have a greater and more broad vista to behold. but it's hard. It's hard to get up there. And cold. Especially as we get older. Next is arena and utility. Life is an arena for the development and utilization of our objectives and principles, which principles hang like tools on a belt around our waist. We are like gladiators fighting in an arena, utilizing what we learned and know to get by and stay alive and to live well. Next comes nothing is enough. This kind of reminds me of Temperance in a way. First time, it's funny that that's the first time I realized that nothing is enough is a lot like Temperance. But it's a little bit different. Instead of saying that it's better to live a simple life, I'm suggesting that that life can be a good life. In fact, it can be a better life than a life of gross accumulation and consumption. I'll have to think about that, how those are similar. I wonder if I've duplicated myself in a way. Maybe, or maybe they just touch on the same idea in a slightly different way. And then the last principle is the principle of fun. This is the newest principle, and the one that I'm working on, because I frankly I don't know how to have fun. I'm not very good at having a good time. I'm darn really good at working, and I'm really good at working. I'm not so good at fun, so I need to work on that. And it's funny, I was reading my book by Aristotle, and he was describing how it's a measure of of society. One of the measures of a good society is how it teaches its citizens to enjoy their free time. What an interesting idea. Okay, well, those are my objectives and principles. Let's talk about the coming day. It's a Thursday. I think I have just one meeting today, a team meeting. This means that I have really the day free to really focus on the next steps with my training development. So before that, right off the bat, I'm going to be working on lesson 2, the actual lesson content. I've completed the training manual. Now I have to generate that into supporting materials to actually use in the classroom. So I'll develop that today, and also by noon. And I have to review. I'm going to review the support guide that one of the team members wrote, and then I'm going to also by noon. Like I said when I started off, I'm going to complete the training manual and or send the training manual and the training plan and communication plan to our executive sponsor for final review. But most of the day is going to be all about basically writing. If I can write lesson 2 and maybe even record the sample video for it by the end of the day, that would be awesome. Although I think that's asking a lot. So what am I anticipating in terms of challenge? Maybe trying to bite off more than I can handle. Maybe that's it. We'll see. I'm not really into. It's like I said, when I live this sequestered life here, excuse me, in this little house here, all the time with. I don't go out much, just to my long walks, my mountain climb. It's hard to get challenged much, which is its challenge in its own right. I was talking to my wife about that, how living this sequestered life like this, I feel myself, excuse me, mentally and physically coming off the edge of being capable of engaging with society. And what I mean by that is, when I was commuting an hour each way every day in difficult LA traffic on my big giant motorcycle, I stayed limber and nimble, and my mind was tuned to riding. The bike was a second nature to me. Now when I take the bike out, I'll go days and days and maybe a week or more, or 2 weeks without riding the bike. It's like surfing for the first time in a couple of years. You're like all wobbly all over the place, and it's dangerous, right? Because I'm not riding every day. I'm noticing that even when I drive the car now. And when I go to the supermarket, I feel like I'm a bit like I'm an alien. Like when the first time I went to a supermarket in Japan, it's like, strange. That strange alien feeling of getting old. And I was talking to Yumiko, and I was saying, we have to watch out because this is where we're headed. Especially after we retire. If we don't stay engaged, we will fall away. And that's how old people go into themselves and eventually fold into themselves and die away. Okay. Sobering thought. I need to think about more about it. But that's it for today. Thank you for joining me for my Good Life meditation. Have a good day and be safe, but not too safe.